Probably not, but let's talk about it anyway. Hello everybody. One of the biggest things I've been wondering about ever since DST was fully established was if the current head honcho of the Constant herself, Charlie, would ever possibly end up as a playable character. Such a thing isn't entirely impossible, since way before Maxwell was a survivor like the rest of the cast, he too was in a similar position to Charlie. So how about today we look into the possibility of Charlie ever becoming playable, diving into the reasons why not, and briefly going over what her potential abilities could even be. I'm sure I could whip something together. I don't think I need to tell you who Charlie is, because at this point I've done more than my fair share of videos talking about her, but for those who are uninitiated, she's the leader of the Constant, where the game takes place. She succeeded Maxwell, well, technically Wilson, as ruler. Before all that though, she was a performer and friend of Maxwell, who was then known as William Carter, who was taken here alongside them during a fateful night many years ago before the game took place. Instead of becoming a ruler like William did, she was devolved into some sort of feral beast that wanted nothing more than to put a certain something back together again. After the events of Don't Starve's solo adventure mode, she was able to find the throne and reclaim it for herself, ushering in a new rose-thorn covered reign. She brought the survivors together, sought out to rebuild the ancient power that rebirthed her, but still importantly, hunted you in the dark. But I know what you're all thinking. Several different reasons why she couldn't be playable, so let's talk about those reasons. The biggest reason I could think of is that Charlie is more than the leader of the Constant. She's something much worse. She's a gameplay mechanic. As we are all more than hopefully aware by now, Charlie is the #1 thing that gets us whenever we hang out in the darkness for a little too long. She's been doing this since the game's inception, and continues to hunt us down in the dark to this very day, even as Queen. You see, when Maxwell was leading the Constant, his role was much more unseen. Sure, he most likely made the darn place and is the entire reason the game exists to begin with, but his role throughout gameplay is next to non-existent. We can see this by how when you played solo Don't Starve, which takes place during Maxwell's reign, if you are to play as Maxwell, the game just continues on as normal. All you miss out on is his smarmy introductions, since that's his only tangible impact through gameplay, hitting you with the hey pals and the stop doing this during adventure mode. The game is fully playable with him being playable. But with Charlie, it's a different story. Not only does she rule the place much like Maxwell once did, but she also hunts you too. So if she wants to become playable, sure, the Constant itself can manage without a ruler, at least for a short time, but the whole killer darkness mechanic would be completely gone. A keystone mechanic that's as important to the game as finding food is, making sure you have a light source. Simply put, the game can't be what it is without it, so for all intents and purposes, that reason alone is a big reason why she can never be playable. Unless Charlie is to split. Bear with me for a second here. As we can see in the earlier animated shorts for Don't Starve Together, before Charlie became the Night Queen herself, she was nothing more than a regular aspiring woman. But when she was taken to the Constant, a power was gifted to her. A power directly from them. But this power wasn't enough to fully turn her into a monster. As we can see, there's almost 2 Charlies at this point. The calm, reasonable, almost friendly Charlie, and the feral, violent night monster that we all know and love. So what if this feral form was to somehow separate from the now Queen Charlie, leaving the more stable version of her behind as the playable one, while still having something that lurks in the night? Now, I'm unsure if this feral night monster would inherit Charlie's, soul I suppose you could say, or if it would just be a raw manifestation of evil night monster power. Either way, it could work as a potential solution to make her playable. But what about Winona? She has many skills and perks that let her avoid being attacked in the dark due to her connections with Charlie. How would such perks work against an entity entirely separated from her? Well, the topic of insight perks and alignments is a whole other can of worms we gotta look into. Simple solution could be something along the lines of, Charlie is still able to bestow these powers to other survivors as some form of residual connection she may have to them. Or, the powers bestowed by Charlie would remain after she lost her own powers, if the game is to be played in a linear sense. But I don't see that happening since the way time flows with the story in the game makes my brain hurt. What could possibly be another explanation could be that they would instead bestow powers to the survivors instead of Charlie, gutting her out of the picture entirely, cool cutscenes included. But wouldn't that mess with the entire logic behind the game's story and progression? The survivors give Dreadstone to her to start the whole Shadow Rift situation. How could such an event happen if Charlie isn't the one to start it? It's simple really, the survivors could just rebuild it themselves. Yeah, that's a super cop-out answer, but I'm really tugging on strings here, okay? Look, overall, I do not see someone like Charlie ever being playable in DST without a huge status quo shift. One even larger than Maxwell losing the throne. One even larger than Charlie taking the throne. So many mechanics and plot points would need to be redefined and explained once more, all for one single new character. Night Monster, insight trees, quest chains, all would need to be changed from the ground up. Unlikely? Massively. Impossible? Well, let's never say never. Back before Don't Starve Together even came out, the prospects of a multiplayer sequel to regular Don't Starve was seen as impossible, and look how much has changed since then. Maybe a playable Charlie is something you can expect in a potential third game in the series, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We are forgetting the number one reason she can't ever be playable. Her name ain't beginning with a W. But Maxwell, his name doesn't... yeah, his actual name is William. Maxwell is just a stage name. Charlie isn't a pseudonym or a title for anything, that's just her real name. Her real first name. We don't know her surname. We don't even know what letter it starts with. But what if I told you we did? Somehow, if you were able to find the playbill in its item form, I seriously have no idea if you're able to find this thing naturally in-game, but you can spawn it with commands. If you were to inspect it as Wilson, you'll see that the stage play, the one created by Charlie herself, is signed with the initials CW. Need I say any more? Actually yes, because this is technically unimplemented content, this cannot be considered as canon, but that doesn't stop us. But more than anything, it's probably just an Easter egg about the whole every character, playable or not, has to have a W name. Except like, you know, these guys. But now that we've looked at how Charlie could, or well more importantly, could not, become a playable survivor, it's time we look at what her gameplay could be like. Now, there are a few mods out there that actually make Charlie playable, but I'm going to come up with my own ideas. Do make sure to check the mods out though. I only had a quick glance over certain ones, but they look absolutely fantastic. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to try and get creative. First of all, we need to figure out what type of character Charlie would be. In DST, currently you can kind of divide characters into several differing categories based on their playstyle. The overarching ones we have are like resource gathering characters, supportive characters, combat focused characters with those having subcategories such as melee focus, ranged caster types, and summoner army focused characters. Oh my gosh, are there a lot of those. So where would Charlie fall? Now an easy pick would be a minion based character since she was a queen, and that makes sense. But no, I don't want another minion character, and a former constant rule of becoming a minion character would tread on Maxwell's shoes a little bit too much. I want to base Charlie off this version of her, or even this version of her, basically completely split from her Night Monster form and Queen form, but with a bit of residual shadow magic left over. Now I don't see her being particularly resourceful like Woody, so to say, or as headstrong as Wigfrid or Wolfgang, but how about she explores a unique side of combat we don't have in the game yet? Stealth. I'm just spitballing ideas at this point. Instead of being directly combat focused, she would instead have abilities to duck in and out of combat, lurk in the shadows and strike unexpected enemies for as big as spikes of damage. Kinda like what that new Ink Blight they added in the recent update does. It would explore a combat style not yet seen in the game, and whilst possibly would require a whole code rewrite incorporating stealth into the game, would oddly fit the former Shadow Queen herself, I'd say. From lurking around as the shadows to lurking around among the shadows. Could be something as simple as an invisibility ability, that was really fun to say, that she can activate on demand that has a cooldown or a cost, with an opening shadowy strike upon leaving invisibility. Chuck a bit of planar damage, maybe some shadowy lifesteal, and you got yourself a potent opener and finisher to most combat engagements. Need to break off to heal? Wanna get the jump on an unexpected pigman? I think it fits Charlie, personally. I really didn't want to make her another summoner like Maxwell. And whilst a caster would be really cool, that could end up like a shadowy version of Willow if we're not careful. Though saying that, a shadow-based caster would be really bloomin' cool. Oh yeah, her stats. I'd prefer her to have all-around average stats, I'd say. Maybe a reduced drain in pure darkness to hark back to her times living in the stuff, but as a combat-focused character, I don't see it fitting to lower her health. She probably is more able-bodied than most other characters in this game, to be fair. She looks after herself, on God. And whilst there could be an argument to be made that the time on the throne has made her frail, like it did to Maxwell, I would disagree. Both because the throne isn't draining Charlie's life force yet, and she seems quite more free in will and actions. But also because Maxwell was a frail nerd even before he became and unbecame the King of the Constant. Nothing really changed besides the evil shadow powers. Overall, we don't really have any fully rogue characters in the game yet, and if we were to design a character based on her backstory, we'd just have yet another performer up there with Wigfrid and Maxwell, and to be honest, we don't need a third with that aesthetic. I think focusing on Charlie post getting her shadow form and queen powers could make for an interesting design. But at the end of the day, I ain't a video game designer, but you guys might be. Make sure to let me know what abilities you would give her in the impossible chance she became a playable character. Would you make a summoner? A glass cannon? Maybe a crafty, resourceful girl like her sister? Who knows? But the focus of this video isn't about what she would do as a survivor, more so the impact it would have on the game. But what about the impact on the other survivors? The interactions between her and Maxwell? What about Winona? Heck, even Wilson might have some friendly words to share with her. More than anything I want from a playable Charlie, besides a new way to experience the game, would be her quotes and interactions with everybody. That, and some cool new skins. Untriumphant skin with her white dress? Maybe something with her coat? The possibilities are endless with this pretty woman. I'd love to fully explore the interactions and feelings she'd have with the other survivors. Oh wait, I already did that, didn't I? But more so from the perspective of her being in a position as a survivor. Would it humble her? Did she even need humbling? Would she get along well with Maxwell? Hate his guts? What about the kids? Would she get along well with them? And Winona? What would either of them say to each other now? Time may never tell, so all we can do is speculate whilst we can. Because as it is, that's all we've got, I'm afraid. Like I've said many times already in this video, I genuinely do not see her ever becoming playable in the near future. But I've been wrong before, and this video has been super fun speculating on. Thank you all for watching and listening to my insane ramblings about a woman in a video game that I'm a bit too interested in. Maybe I should do a video like this about Wagstaff ever being added. To be honest, I see him being added quite more likely than Charlie by a large factor. A topic for another day though. Take care everybody and have a lovely time. Bye bye.